Hey guys, if you are joining us, leave us a comment and let us know if you can hear us. We are trying a new mic situation today. I just want to make sure technically everything is looking good before we start.
Which page are you
on Rage Against the Mini, or the other one, the other Kristen Howard.
There you
go. Yeah, guys, let us know if you can hear us okay, because we want to make sure that you can. We've got these new fancy lapel mics.
Mm-hmm.
So technologically advanced, at least for us.
Getting there.
And really, it's all about the fact that I dropped my phone in the toilet a while back and ruined the volume input.
Can you hear us? Give us a thumbs up if you can.
Okay, let us know. We have a lot to cover today.
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. It has been a couple weeks, yeah. So we've got a lot to catch up on. Although, I mean, it's been a couple weeks, but it was a bit of a quiet couple of weeks because the the conventions are kind of over.
Yeah.
The debates haven't yet started, and so we're kind of waiting for more action. But there's been a couple things to happen. Well, let me start with introductions, though. I'm Kristen Howerton. I write a blog called Rage Against the Minivan.
And I'm Paul Martin, and I write a blog called Paulosophia.
And Paul and I are friends, and we are political junkies, but we disagree.
Not as much this time.
Not as much right now at all. But I am a socialist Democrat.
And I'm a moderate Republican still.
Mm-hmm. Although we do agree at this point on our disdain of Donald Trump.
Yeah, we do.
So let's start with Trump's new sort of, what do we want to call this? It's his Man of Compassion campaign. He is trying to win the bid for the black vote, trying to win the bid for the minority vote, and trying to kind of come out as this sort of man of the people, man of compassion thing.
Yeah, and there's debate. Of course, he has a new campaign manager. Mm-hmm. He has a new consultant, I suppose, in Stephen Bannon. So he made some big changes. Paul Manafort's not there anymore. And so suddenly, as they hit the deck, there is a new Trump campaign. I mean,
yeah,
literally when they landed, suddenly Donald Trump comes out and starts talking about African Americans. Mm-hmm. He's softening his tone on immigration.
Yeah.
And he's talking about the biggest news was, I think, 6 or 7 days ago when he said that he made a mistake. And sometimes in the heat of a debate, you say certain things that you don't really mean, and he's sorry for any pain that he caused, which, of course, that hit the airwaves. But he left out any specificity. So just imagine someone comes to you that offends you and say, I'm really sorry for anything I did to hurt you.
I don't know if you've had that experience, but it's actually super frustrating. I did have a friend who did. I'm sorry for however I hurt your feelings. It's like, oh, thanks.
Want to be a bit more specific about it?
Right, yeah. Well, but it's interesting because at the same time, he's posturing himself to be the friend to the African Americans. I'm the one who's going to save you. And yet he hires or partners with Steve Bannon, who is from Breitbart, who is sort of this Tea Party Leninist, part of the alt-right, which ultimately the alt-right, ALT, alternative right, I mean, they really champion themselves as being white supremacist. The alt-right absolutely are the people who came after me when I was attacked online by a bunch of white supremacists and racists. They were all coming from alt-right websites. So, he's coming from this, very white supremacy. He's very concerning.
He's concerning, and he's deliberate.
Yeah.
This isn't a conspiracy theory.
Right.
Though he is into conspiracy theories.
He is a conspiracy theorist, but he is absolutely vocal about wanting to tear down the Republican Party as we know it.
Right. Yeah. This is a guy that, in Donald Trump appointing him, he put up his middle finger to Paul Ryan, to Mitch McConnell, to John McCain.
The establishment.
The establishment.
Mm-hmm.
There are theories out there that Trump knows he'll lose. He's down dramatically in the swing states. So even though the national polls are between kind of 4 and 10 points, in all of the swing states, virtually, Trump is down. And to turn those numbers now has never happened before. And so Trump and anything could happen, but for all intents and purposes, he's lost this election.
Yeah.
But he knows that his goal is to create a media empire that will be founded on his main principles, which are xenophobia, to a certain degree sexism, certain degrees racism, and this kind of nationalism that we've talked about before.
Right.
And I think that's where Trump is driving this ship, myself.
Yeah, I think that that's a really interesting theory because it would make a ton of sense. I mean, he's always been into media, and it's low-hanging fruit. I mean, I hate to say it, but like rallying the base with his brand of xenophobia has been incredibly effective for him as a candidate. And I think as a news outlet, if he was going to be the sort of alt-right Huffington Post, I think he would make a ton of money and be very successful at it, sadly. But I could definitely see where he's leaning and why pulling in Steve Bannon was a part of that, because Breitbart is in that leaning as well.
And Roger Ailes too, who was the head of Fox up until recently, when he was accused of sexual harassment and had to resign because the allegations were so overwhelming. He's now part of Trump's team, although they're denying it. Trump's campaign manager is denying it. But what you have, I think what happened with Trump is he got into this thing and he's realized that it is a movement. I hate to give him that much credit, but it's very clearly a movement of maybe between 10 and 20% of Americans overall. The voting Americans, 13, 14 million that voted for him. And he knows that with 13, 14, 15 million Americans, you can get yourself a media company.
Yeah.
You can get yourself some ideas.
Yeah.
He's got people coming on board now, not many, but Rudy Giuliani, Chris Christie. So with that power comes people that want jobs later on down the road. And it's going to be, the thing that concerns me by far the most with all of this is it's a threat to our democracy. Trump has said the system is rigged, and he's starting to trumpet up his idea that if he loses, it will be because the system is rigged.
Right.
The fact that any Trump supporter would not, by that comment alone, wash their hands and go, vote for the Libertarian or don't vote at all.
Right.
This is a guy who did nothing during the primaries, nothing except quote the polls.
Yeah.
If there's anything he did, he said, I'm ahead, I'm winning, look at this poll, look at this poll, look at this poll. And now he's behind. And the first thing he says, what post-Democratic convention is, the system's rigged.
Right. Yeah, and I feel like this idea that he's going to upset the establishment, it's a national security risk as well. You can't just overturn the apple cart in the global economy. It's really unsafe. I don't know. I don't know why people would want it. And for you as a Republican, that has to be really insulting too, to hear these, to hear Steve Bannon and Trump both kind of saying, we want to ruin the Republican Party as it is.
Yeah. Well, and it begs the question, I think Trump's a Republican in name.
Yeah, I agree.
I've said dozens of times on this recording that he's hijacked the party, and so it's, you're on an American Airlines plane and then you suddenly hijack it, and is it an American Airlines plane anymore? Well, no, it's the control of the hijackers, and he's hijacked the party. So I wouldn't consider Trump to be a Republican. I would consider him to be somebody very angry about the changing color of this country.
I agree. I totally agree. Speaking of the changing color of this country, so, he said this week that he, was asking African Americans for their vote. He said, you guys, of course, speaking globally, as if African Americans are a monolith, your youth are unemployed, you're living in poverty. Right. Basically, you're destitute, you can't help yourself. Obama wasn't able to help you. What have you got to lose? It was so insulting.
Yeah.
And stereotypical and not steeped in reality or fact.
Yeah, I was watching a news network last night, and they were interviewing an African-American principal of a school somewhere in Ohio, a law student who was African-American, and they were just saying, it's just, and again, it speaks to... it just speaks to how corrupt he is, I believe, to speak in those types of generalities. To stand up as a candidate and say, look, you're poor, you don't have any jobs, you can't even drive down the street. Well, a lot of African Americans live in multi-million-dollar homes, not in the ghetto. Millions of them do. But he continues to...
and it's really, it's being insulting, and it's playing on stereotypes under the guise of compassion. You know, here, come under my wing and I'll help you, losers. You know, I mean, that's really what he's doing. It's so gross.
And it seems like, I mean, there are going to be people, you know, in very poor and difficult situations that want hope. And I'm sure they did some, you know, some research, and they might get, you know, very tiny percentage. He has like 1% nationally of the African American support. Hillary has like 90% in the recent poll. But I heard that what he's trying to do is appeal to women. He's trying to appeal to white women by suddenly saying, well, I'm not really sure we're going to deport 12 million Mexicans. I want to be, you know, I want to have compassion. That compassion now is suddenly in his rhetoric in the last 2 or 3 days. Yeah. And I heard that what he's trying to do is appeal to these women, because he's so pathetically upside down in that demographic.
I can see that. Okay, so another thing that has happened since we spoke is this guy, Evan McCullen, who is a Mormon conservative, is making a bid as this sort of alternative Republican candidate. And he's gaining traction in Utah.
Yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts on this guy? I will say I'm not a Republican, but he seems like a decent choice.
Yeah, I mean, he's young. He's got some remarkable not pedigree, but he was a Navy SEAL or something, and he fought in Afghanistan. He's very well spoken. But, you know, it's just another one of these states, you know, Utah. You know, we have Georgia, now we have Utah and Colorado, you know, these states that were, I think Arizona, that were supposed to be red states, you know, Republican states, that are now in play. Meaning that, you know, Utah voted like, what was it, 68% on average over the last dozen elections for Republicans.
Very Republican.
And suddenly Trump is struggling largely because of the Mormon demographic, and largely because these people think issues regarding ethics and morality are super important.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Evan won't get far outside of Utah, but even to put a state like Utah in play, it's got to be so troubling for Trump.
Well, so we've got Evan, who's you know, McCullen, who's kind of making a little bit of a wave, and then Johnson, who's the Libertarian candidate, who a lot of people sort of like his ethos, and I would agree, and I've said this before, that he seems like a reasonable person, like an ethical person, like a moral person.
Ex-governor and
However, for me as a Democrat, I mean, I can't fathom voting for a libertarian because philosophically it's so different. So I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about, you know, what is a libertarian? I think a lot of people are confused.
Yeah.
What's different? Because I have a lot of Republican friends who are kind of down with the libertarian ideals. What is a libertarian? How are they different from a Republican? How are they different from a Democrat?
Yeah, I think they have a branding problem. They should hire you to help straighten it.
I know,
straighten it out.
Let's articulate what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a heady word, libertarian.
Yeah.
You know, it's heady, but basically the idea is we have free will. People have free will. That's the libertarian idea. You know, we have total liberty as people, so we don't need to be told what to do. Therefore, get the government out. So if you're a Republican and you don't know anything about libertarians, I mean, it's the ultimate non-government party.
It's the closest to anarchy.
Yeah, I mean, the general idea is the government only exists to protect us from, you know, imploding or external invaders. But we need to get out of Afghanistan. We need to get out of Iraq. We need to get the government out of our businesses. We need to just let people be free. I think that idea is appealing, especially to many Republicans.
Yeah.
But there's a branding problem. It just sounds like libertarian, huh? What's that?
Well, there's a branding problem. I think it's an interesting thing because I've seen a lot of Christians leaning libertarian. But libertarian then would also naturally say the government stays out of issues of abortion, right? I mean, am I correct in assuming that? If you think the government should be out of your business, then they shouldn't be legislating who can marry who can have an abortion or not, right? Like, so... Yeah,
it does have a tendency
morally hands-off.
Yeah, it does have a tendency to... so the libertarian on a social side is very left. right? They think that
Yeah.
pot, I mean, get the government out of our business. If people want to smoke pot, let them smoke pot.
Let them have their guns.
Let them have their guns. And it'll be interesting to see in the decades ahead how much. I think they should change their name.
I think they should too, but I really truly think that a lot of people just don't understand it, because I think for most conservative Christian Republicans, the Libertarian Party does not address the moral legislation that a lot of Christians want. They want to legislate morality. The Libertarian Party doesn't do that. And then for people like myself, Democrats, on the other hand, they don't want to have things in place like social services or some of the more socialist programming that we have. So it doesn't, when people are like, have you looked at a libertarian? I'm kind of like, I'm a socialist. Like, I'm the opposite of libertarian. Yeah,
and I think there's a great simplicity, and most of the arguments I've had with many of my Republican friends is this simplistic idea that, hey man, I know a guy and he grew up poor and his dad beat the hell out of him and he's a multimillionaire now. So they take this outlier and they try to apply that outlier to every person that lives in South Central LA. And wherever else.
Well, these are the same people that had a friend who lived in England and he had to have a surgery and he died. So
absolutely.
But always the outlier stories.
And that's the downside of the libertarian mindset, is that these social issues, the issue of poverty, the innate systemic kinds of problems that happen in the inner city with poverty, single mom, it cannot be reduced to, hey, suck it up, 13-year-old kid, latchkey kid, just work harder. It does not. Statistically, go to San Quentin, interview everyone in there. They came from a certain socioeconomic background for a reason, because it's much more difficult to climb out of that cesspool. Sorry, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think, to me, the libertarian sort of motto is like, every man for himself. Like, you're on your own.
Yep.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Which, I don't know, I mean, to me is antithetical to, as a Christian, I don't really think that's...
But Christians are going to come back and say, wait, Jesus never said it's the government's responsibility. It's
that's
our job
true.
As Christians, but that's never going to happen.
That's true.
Christians and the churches.
And that's a valid argument. I mean, I think, well, why don't we want the government to reflect the ideals we have for society? But I've definitely heard that argument of Jesus wasn't talking about the government, and you do that in your private life.
Right. And there are going to be some, there are going to be, as you know, some lucky kids that are recipients of church-based or nonprofit-based programs that happen in the inner city, or parents of people of faith, whether they be Christians or not, that decide to adopt or whatever it might be. But still, that's just scratching the surface, as you know.
I mean, if that were the solution and churches would just take care of all the social ills, we wouldn't have anyone not being able to pay their medical bills. We wouldn't have any kids sitting in group homes. I mean, it's just, the reality is it's not happening. So therefore, we have to take action in the ways that we can.
There seems to be this. Did you ever read those or see 60 Minutes where they have those happiness?
Yes.
They do. Have you seen those before?
Where they look at like who's happiest and where.
And they're fairly sophisticated measures.
Matrix,
matrix, and the socialist countries end up on top.
Always.
Which I'm not a socialist. Ultimately, I have kind of a libertarian ideal that is very similar to how I parent my kids, which is, hey, you better get out there and make it happen.
Yeah.
This idea that you got to work.
Yes.
You need to take responsibility for your actions. You're going to end up in jail.
Yeah.
And I kind of like to have the idea of applying that same principle to our country. But it's interesting, Denmark, Switzerland, these countries that are pretty socialistic.
The
people
or
are really happy, and it makes some of my far right-wing Republican friends angry because they don't like to talk about those studies.
Well, happiness, whatever.
Happiness.
We're a capitalist country. Where does happiness play in? All right. Anything else?
Hillary emails, blah, blah, blah. Hillary emails, blah, blah, blah.
I know. It's just never ending.
It's interesting. I don't know if you heard about Trump and his surrogates attacking Hillary's health. You heard about that?
Yes, I did.
I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Casting aspersions on perhaps she has a seizure disorder. taking clips of her where, you know, she's kind of like rolling her eyes or there was one where she was being silly. But they did a story on it. I don't remember what news program, but, you know, I think it was Sean Hannity that was really playing into this. And he grabbed some experts, you know, like neurologists or something, to come on the show and like look at footage of her and determine whether or not these could be like, you know, mini seizures. And even the experts was like, yeah, no. It was like, I mean, but it could be, right? And they're like, not really.
Poor Hannity.
I know.
I'm surprised he didn't vet them better, because I'm sure he would have wanted to. He's now fully behind Trump, evidently, advising him. But I don't know. I'm not as inclined to the sexism card or the feminist ideology as you would be, or many of the people that you swim with would be. But there's no way, if Trump was running against a man, that they would be leveling these accusations against him. No. To me, this is a woman's week. She's not going to be able to handle it. She's not going to be able to take on ISIS. It's disgusting.
Well, and I think it's ageist too.
Yeah,
you know, ageist. I mean, she's a woman and she's an older woman. You know, and we're just not accustomed to, you know. I mean, women of a certain age in Hollywood or, you know, whatever, are just sort of, you know, put into the corner. So, yeah, I think that it's ageist and sexist both.
Yeah, but I mean, that people would, I'm such a logical guy. There is no evidence.
No.
Her doctors have given her a clean bill of health. On what basis are you making her health a campaign issue? There is nothing there.
Yeah.
And yet there are millions upon millions of Americans that are susceptible to conspiracy theories. And that's scary.
It is scary. That is the scariest thing coming out of this whole election year, is like, the masses are asses. There's a lot of, I mean, Hillary's lied. She's lied. She has been dishonest. She has been shady. Yes.
Hey, I'm willing to say that. But that she's has failing health and she can't really.
Yeah. Are you guys concerned how it looks that she hasn't gone to to Louisiana to address the flood victims? I don't know. I mean,
that's a good question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, there was, you know, Trump, obviously, thanks for the question. Trump went out and spoke with him. The governor of Louisiana, I saw him interview, told the Obama administration, President Obama, not to come because all the first responders were helping people from dying, keeping people from dying. Of course, Trump turned that into a campaign advantage. He went out there, lifted some, took some things out of the truck. It was a photo op.
Totally.
But I'm glad that he went. These things are so complicated. I remember.
I mean, I don't know. Has she given a reason for not having gone out there? Because, I mean, I was in a natural disaster. I was in Haiti during an earthquake, and I just clearly remember a point where it was like, people stop coming. Like, when you're coming in, you are then draining a resource from the people that need it. I mean, I don't know that she is needed on the ground. I think those tend to be more symbolic and more, photo ops than actual assistance. I mean, if she's not, I don't know.
I wonder if it's one. I'm wondering if it's one-upping the president as well. If by her going, it makes the president look bad. But I did see an interview with George W. Bush last night, and it was very telling. He was on Oprah Winfrey apologizing. No, he didn't apologize. He said, "I made a mistake during Katrina," because remember he did that flyover.
Yeah.
And they took a picture of it and showed it, and instead of it looking like he was there, giving all national federal resources to the crisis, it looked like he was in some nice little coat in the air conditioning of his plane above them.
Yeah.
And he was saying it was a total tactical mistake. And had he, if he could do it over, he would have landed. But man, it's got to be tough for these presidents.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I'm more concerned with what Hillary or anyone is doing behind the scenes than I am whether or not they stepped off of a plane and spoke to people.
Right, and the governor did say, and he's a Democrat, but he did say that as soon as it happened, President Obama called him, and there was every single resource at his disposal from the federal government. And
And I think you might be right. Hillary may be deferring to the sitting president to be that, kind of compassionate person at this point too. I don't know. I don't know. To answer your question, I'm not hugely concerned, but I'll look into that more. All right, I think that's it for this week. Well, when are debates starting?
Debate? I think the first one is late September 28th, I believe.
It's going to be good.
It's going to be good. And now there's a big question as to who has the courage to be Clinton's sparring partner during the debates, because Monica Lewinsky is around the corner, and they're saying that,
he's going to bring that up.
Yeah, and who will have the courage as her debate partner to act like how Trump might act during the debate, which could be just absolutely...
Oh, he'll be horrible. Yeah, and he'll use plausible deniability, and he'll say it, but he won't say it, and he'll say it in a way that she can't respond to it. Yeah, he's gross. I mean, I wish that she wouldn't have to respond to that at all, because her husband's misbehavior is nothing that she needs to...
No, and I have no question that she will be more than prepared. She is a stellar debater. She has plenty if he wants to go there. I don't know if she'll go there, but if he wants to drum up the muck. In the case of Lewinsky, you're talking about the wife of, versus in Trump's case, he has been on the record about his sexual exploits.
This is true.
And so if I think it's dangerous ground for him because of his standing with women already.
It's so true. Like, you're going to talk about her husband's infidelity when your own infidelity is...
Yeah, and not even just the infidelity, which, that happens, but just the comments he's made about women, and talking about if his daughter wasn't his daughter, he'd be dating her.
So gross.
It's beyond comprehension for a presidential candidate, in my opinion. Yeah.
All right, well, we will hit these up on our blog and on our collective blogs, and would love to see your comments and hear any questions you have for our next time. Thanks for joining us.